Okay, it looks like we have 83 people waiting right now. So, Adam, we are live,
Okay.
and we just want to say hi to all these people. There are people from Costa Rica, Southern California, Montana, Berlin,
Wow.
Montana, Cape Cod, Illinois, and of course here in Utah.
Wow. All over the place. That's awesome.
I know. It's great to hang out with you today.
Yeah. Thank you, everyone, for tuning in. And thank you, Keith, for having me. I appreciate it.
Yeah. Okay, well, we only have an hour, so I'll just let you take it away.
Okay, sure. So what I'm doing today, I am doing a color study. And this would be like, if I was doing a large studio piece, I work from life as much as possible. So if I can't do the studio piece from life, then I will always do at least one color study actually from life. So I actually have my wife, Andrea. She's sitting here. And right now, the sun's behind a cloud. But it's all right, because I have this photo to go off of. The reason I like to paint from photos, or to paint from life, is because the human eye can see so much bigger, so much of a bigger range of lights and darks than the camera can see, and you can also see more color. And so that's why I always like to at least do one color study from life before I do a big painting. When I work on a big painting, I will work from photos, but as far as the colors and the values, the darks and lights, I'll use the color study as a reference. And I just feel that just gives you so much more of a realistic end product when you have that influence from life. So that's what I'm going to show you today. The lighting is direct sunlight coming in, and I think Keith has the image there for you.
Yeah.
So basically, in particular, this type of lighting is really important to get from life. I work from life anyway, no matter what the lighting situation is, but particularly when you have like this really strong sunlight, if you've ever tried to take a photo of that, either the camera is going to expose for the lights and then all of the shadows are going to be super dark, or your camera is going to expose for the shadows and all of the lights are going to be totally blown out and overexposed, right?
Yeah.
So I've done like a ton of Photoshop work in this photo to make it look somewhat like what I was seeing in real life. Okay, so that way, hopefully you'll be able to see somewhat of what I'm seeing in real life. It's not perfect. I couldn't get it perfect, obviously, so there is going to be some disconnect. But as much as possible, I tried to do a lot of Photoshop work to make it look like it would look in real life. Does that make sense? So, okay, so I am gonna get started here, and I've got to fly like the wind because I only have an hour. The way that I start out is I like to get my darkest dark and my lightest light in there really early on in the process. And as you can see, I've already got my drawing and my tone on my canvas. I just did that to save as much time as possible so I can demonstrate the values and the colors. So my go-to value for the very darkest dark is transparent oxide red and ultramarine blue deep. And I'm just going to establish that very darkest value. So squint down at the model, and the very darkest values are like right in here. Oops, where her hair is, like that.
And we provided a link for your palette, so if anyone is interested in finding out more, we have a couple links below. You'll be able to see we have your upcoming workshop that's still going on, so they can go check it out. And also, I'm glad you just got your second block of the course released, so we have that link there. And then there's also a blog post for your palette, so people will be able to get a lot of information from you.
Yeah, sounds great. So yeah, just check out those links. I might mention what colors I have here. No, I'll just go through them real quick. Permanent red, medium, permanent alizarin. I've got permanent orange, lemon, permanent yellow, medium, yellow ochre, transparent orange, transparent oxide red, viridian, ultramarine blue deep, and titanium white. I know I just like blew through those like super fast, but like Keith was saying, just go ahead and check out that link. and it's a blog post that I've written on the colors that we usually use, my wife and I. So go ahead and check that out, and you should be able to replay this video too. I think. Are you recording it, Keith?
Yeah, it'll be on the YouTube wherever they watch it, and it'll be just on there.
Yeah.
They'll be able to. I know a lot of students, they will actually go paint along with it, which is great to see their results.
Oh yeah, cool. Okay, so I've already got my very darkest value established, and now I want to get my very lightest. And squinting down at the subject, the very lightest thing is the headband, or actually it's a scarf wrapped around her head, and it's very, very light. I don't want to just paint it pure white, so I've got some yellow in there, but it's mostly white. I'm making it as light as I can. And so that'll serve as my lightest light. Let me get it up there and see what that looks like. And by painting the lightest light and the darkest dark, that helps me to establish a range of value, a range of darks and lights to start out with. And then it gives me something to compare to as I continue painting more and more values. I can judge all of the other values off of the lightest light and the darkest dark, and that helps me.
Yeah. Someone's curious about your brushes.
Okay. Yeah. Oh, I should have put the link because I have a blog post about my brushes too. Okay, but these are. What's that?
Oh, I said later I'll get the link from you and we'll add it. But right now we can just briefly talk about it.
Yeah, sure. So I use Rosemary and Company brushes. This is her Ultimate Bristle, and I think it's chunking, but I could be wrong with that. Don't quote me. But it's her Ultimate Bristle, and then this is a Mongoose brush. Okay. All right. So now that I have the lightest light and darkest dark, I'm going to try to block in as much as I can, as quick as I can, and the most important thing really that I'm after in this very early stage is I want to separate the lights from the shadows. So I'm looking at the subject and I'm squinting down with my eyes a little bit, and I'm trying to ask myself, what planes are in light and what planes are in shadow? And I want to make sure that I have a good amount of contrast in between those. But I don't want to have so much contrast that the shadows are just super dark and I don't have any detail in the face. I really want to get the information of the face through. So I don't want to have that much contrast. So I want to try to strike a delicate balance between having a good amount of contrast so it really looks like that strong sunlight that's on her, but not so much contrast that I lose too much detail either in the lights or the shadows. So I'm mixing up right now an average color for the skin tones. Transparent oxide red, white, putting in some blue to tone down the color a little bit. Add in a little more red and yellow. Okay, let's see what that looks like. I want it a little bit more yellowy, and add a little more of this yellow and the transparent orange to warm that up. So generally speaking, when you have direct sunlight, that's going to be warm and it's going to produce cooler shadows. Okay, but it's also complicated because there's a lot of light bouncing back up into her face and into her leg. Some of the light is bouncing off of this bright yellow chair into her leg. And so that actually makes the shadows go warm again. So it's a little bit complicated. You kind of have to look and really ask yourself, is it going cooler or is it going warmer? But as a general rule, I'm dealing with warm light from the sun and cooler shadows. Okay, so I'm just going to very quickly try to block everything in. I'm not worried about exact color right now. I'm just trying to get the general values, and that's the most important thing for me to get in right now is the basic values. So basically I'm just painting one average value for each shape, and I can always go back in and add more specific values later, but I just want to get the general idea to begin with, to make sure that I really capture the essence of the light early on. Because there's nothing worse than spending a lot of time doing a bunch of details, and then you step back and realize, oh man, I started out with a bad value to begin with or something. Now, sometimes I kind of go into the painting zone and I stop talking. So if you're, if I'm doing something and not describing what it is, feel free to, ask me, what in the world are you doing? Then I can talk about it. So there's some really beautiful warm light that's coming through her fingers. And I mean, it's just making it really fiery red. So I'm going to try to capture that early on. I'm not changing the value too much, but I'm just going a lot more intense with the chroma of the paint, making a lot more red and yellow in there. Okay, I think I will mix up an average color now for the lit regions of the skin. So that was my shadow. Now I'll put it down low, and then I'll put the lighter color up here, so you can see them together. This is just some leftover paint from the last time. A lot of white in there. So let's see, I'm just gonna get a big old hunk of white and add a little bit of transparent oxide red in there. Now it's not as light as the very lightest value. It's a little bit darker than that, but the light on the skin is still very light. So I'm going to try to keep it that way. And there's a good amount of chroma in there. So I'm seeing orange, maybe a little bit of red and yellow. I'm going to warm it up even more with some more yellow.
So at this point, are you focusing on value and then color temperature rather than specific color matching?
Yeah, very much so. Yep. So now you can see that contrast between the lit region and the shadowed region of the skin, and there's a good amount of contrast, but hopefully I haven't gone so dark with this color that we're not going to get enough detail in the face. I think we'll still be good because I haven't gone anywhere near as dark as that darkest dark. Mm-hmm. So that's the kind of delicate balance I was talking about.
Yeah.
Not to say that I might not adjust it a little bit later, but I think I've got the general idea, at least for now. Yeah, more specific colors can come later, but right now in this stage, I'm just trying to get the basic value relationships between light and shadow and the basic temperatures as well. Okay. There's a little bit of light on her bicep over here, and then a rim of light along her arm like that. Okay, so already, even though I only have like one value for light and one value for shadow, you can still at least start getting the idea that there's a strong light on her, giving that bright contrast.
Quick question.
Now I can. Oh yeah.
Are you using any mediums right now, or is it just straight oils?
Yeah, this is straight oil. I really don't use any mediums personally. The only thing that I will do is I will just barely dip my brush in a little bit of Gamsol, the odorless mineral spirits, and that is usually like right at the beginning when I'm doing this tone, so that I can make it spread more fluidly. But other than that, I mean, for the most part, I really don't use any medium in my paint. So I'm going to try to mix up an average color for the shadowed portion of the jeans right now. It's not as dark as the darkest dark, but it is definitely darker than the skin in shadow. So I can make these comparisons, and I try to squint while I'm doing it. That really helps to get these comparisons accurate. And that I can just make those types of comparisons, squinting and comparing and asking myself how much lighter or how much darker is it. I'm continually asking myself that so I can get the right values. Okay, that might be a little brown. I don't know. Let's see what that looks like. No, that's pretty good. I'm gonna lighten it just a bit. Okay, just slapping it on. Now that's got a lot of glare. What I can do is I'll take like a big, dry, soft brush, like this is a mongoose brush, and I can just very lightly stroke downward and see how that gets rid of the glare there.
Yeah.
When you've got too many horizontal strokes, they tend to catch the light that's coming from above. So if you just very lightly flatten those strokes by stroking vertically, it usually gets rid of the glare. So see, that looks a lot better now. Okay, so next I'm going to do an average color for the shadowed part of her shirt. It's about the same value as her jeans, just a little greener. So in fact, I can even borrow from this color here. And let's see, just make it a little greener with some yellow and yellow ochre maybe. Let's see if this will be any good. So I'm just going around and I'm trying to paint each element. I'm focusing on the skin and then the pants and then the shirt. And for each of those elements, I'm just trying to divide it into two average values for right now. One average value for the lit region and one average value for the shadowed region. And that's all I'm trying to do for right now.
Yeah. And also, when you're doing these two average value, they're nowhere close to the darkest dark or the lightest light because you already established that, right?
Right. Yeah. Exactly. But by doing those two values first, it gives me a gauge by which to measure these values that I'm doing right now. So that's why it's super helpful. If I just jump right into the middle of the value range, it's really hard to tell where those values should be, how light or how dark.
Because you're gonna go over the place, and it's like there's no maximum and minimum. Then like it's hard to decide what you're doing, right?
Yeah. You mean right? Yeah, exactly. If I don't do that in the beginning. Yeah.
Because we know
this makes it more manageable.
Yeah, because we know the value relationship. You can key the painting up or down to be a higher key or super dark, but again, the relationship has to be in check.
Right. Yeah. Exactly. All right, let's get some of those lights in. That's the fun part. That's when you really start seeing things pop. So let's see. I need to go with something definitely lighter and warmer. A lighter and warmer green for the shirt that is in light. Viridian, permanent yellow. Let's see if this looks good. That's a little bit yellowy. It's not quite that yellow. So I'll counteract it with a little bit of white and blue here. Okay, it goes like that. Like that. Okay, a little bit of light sneaking down there.
Hey Adam, so I think last month or the month before, you've been doing this kind of like painting everyday thing during the pandemic, right?
Yeah, well, I did it for the month of April.
Yeah, that is the month. Man, it was April. It's already July. That's crazy.
I know.
But I really enjoy seeing all those daily paintings.
Oh, thanks.
Yeah. So what did
Thanks
you?
a lot. Yeah.
Yeah. What did you get out of it? Any lessons we can take from your experience?
Oh man, yeah, good question. Let me think about that. Yeah, I tried to do. I didn't necessarily try to do really like different things that I'd never done before. It was more like I painted things that I had painted before, but I was coming off of a period of time when I really hadn't been painting a lot. I'd been working on my online course actually, so I've just spent a lot of hours at the computer video editing, and so that was really just for myself, just to get like back into painting and brush off the rust, and so that's pretty much what that was.
Yeah.
I guess I did do some things that were pretty challenging. I did some reflective surfaces. I painted a lemon under cling wrap, so painting the subject through a semi-transparent substance. So yeah, so that was pretty challenging actually, now that I think about it. So, but other times I might do a series of paintings, or maybe just one painting, and I'll have like a specific thing in mind that I'm trying to learn, and I'll just focus on that. So I think that's really good too. I don't know if there's any like one thing that I was trying to teach myself for the April study, other than just getting back to the easel and painting more, which was really good for me. It was really, really good.
Yeah. And also, like you were saying, you have one thing in mind to learn. Like that deliberate practice mentality is really critical, right? You don't just, I mean, you can go just paint whatever and have fun, but if you kind of have something in mind and really just kind of hone in your skills, that you can really use that painting time really well, because you get something out of it.
Oh, for sure. Yeah. Yeah. And I know Brian Mark Taylor talks about this as well, where he likes to focus on one thing at a time that he's trying to learn. I try to encourage my students to do the same thing. Focus on one skill at a time, rather than trying to get everything perfect all at once.
Mm-hmm. Like even right now, your process, you're getting the value down and then get the temperature right, and we can already see that backlit effect is starting to come through the really very simple early stage. But if you start to kind of focus on all the tiny details and say, oh, the eyes are not in there, the lips are not in there, then you're going to get carried away.
Right, exactly. Yeah, it's with this kind of painting, it's really tempting to get in there, and I mean, all that stuff is real inspiring. I mean, you want to do the face, and so it's just tempting to get in there and do that. But if I did, I mean, if this were actually like a larger studio piece that I was trying to complete, and if I spent all of my time from life on the face, then I would start my studio piece, and I would get to like the shirt or the pants, and I'd be like, oh man, like I didn't take the time to capture that from life. So now I just have to guess at what those colors might have been.
Yeah.
So this way you can get a lot of important information down quickly. Your camera is going to be pretty good at capturing the details and stuff, like of the facial features and everything. So you can rely on your camera for that, as long as you can avoid lens distortion. You can rely on the camera for the detail stuff, but what the camera doesn't do as good at seeing is these value relationships and the temperatures and the more subtle color nuances as well,
Yeah. Hey, we got a really good question here. So it's about squinting and simplifying what you see. And this person's question is more like, when you squint, do you completely omit the details that just kind of like until it disappears, or do you more use it to compare the values and edge structure?
Yeah, I do both. I do. The lack of detail is kind of a natural byproduct when you squint. So like primarily I'm squinting because it compresses the value range that you're seeing, and that makes these values easier to compare to each other. So that's the primary reason why I squint. But then it does also have the nice result of cutting out a lot of unnecessary detail as well. And so that can really help, when you're painting from life and you're trying to determine should I put in this detail? Is it important enough to put it in, or maybe it'd be better to leave it out and have a little bit more mystery. And I usually find that if, as a general rule, if I squint and the detail disappears, then it probably wasn't important enough for me to paint it. Mm-hmm. And that usually serves me pretty well. I go by that, and if details disappear, then I can cut those out, and it usually gives a little bit more mystery and intrigue to the painting rather than trying to get every detail in there,
So the next question will be, how does it translate to different stages in your process?
I'm constantly squinting throughout the whole process. So even when I'm moving in for more detail, like if I'm doing a really refined portrait that requires a lot of detail or something like that, I'm still squinting for those values, because sometimes they're so subtle and difficult to get the little relationships between values. So I still continue to squint, and that helps me.
Okay, and then someone's curious about what you're doing right now as far as with the warm lights there.
Oh, with the warm lights?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, so all of these lighter places, I am thinking in general that I'm trying to make them warmer than the stuff that's in shadow, right?
And it's under this lighting situation because it's a warm light source.
Right? Mm-hmm. Yeah, that's correct. Yeah. Now there's a little bit of, I'm going to start getting a little bit more detailed now. Not just go with the 2 values, but I'm going to start adding some more values. So as her neck turns into shadow, it's getting a little bit darker as it goes underneath the chin and into the hair. Okay. There's also some really, really beautiful reflected light, like I think I mentioned earlier. The light's coming from this general direction, but then it's bouncing off of stuff and going back up into the shadows, making them warmer and a little bit lighter. But it can be tricky. You don't want to go too light with the reflected light, okay? Even though light is in the name of reflected light, it's actually still part of the shadow family. Mm-hmm. So you don't want to go so light with it that it ceases to be part of that nice general shape of shadow that you've established. So for instance, this right here on her cheek, can you guys see that? How it gets warmer on her cheek and a little bit lighter, right? Yep. But when you squint down at the photo, it's nowhere near as light as like the top of her yellow scarf on her head or something like that. So I am going lighter, but I don't want to go anywhere near as light as the stuff that's actually in the light.
And that's when you squinted, that's where you compress that value range, and you realize, oh, even though it's reflective light, but it's not separate from the shadow side.
Yeah, right, exactly. It's still part of that shadow family. So if I were to lighten this so much that it looks more like these values right here, then the effect would be ruined. It would look like there's another light source coming from this direction, which there's not in this case.
Right now, you're just doing it one single light source coming from the window, right?
That's right. Yeah. Mm-hmm. There's a little bit of that reflected light catching underneath her eye socket. So these planes that are facing more downward, they're receiving a little bit more light.
Oh, what size?
Again.
What
go ahead.
What size is the surface?
The size?
Yeah.
This is an 11 by 14 stretch canvas. And it's Clayson's number 13 linen, if you're wondering.
Oh, earlier you mentioned that you were working on your online course. That's the second installment of your online course, right? What are the topics you'll be covering in that installment?
In the second part, actually, I do talk about this kind of lighting quite a lot. I talk about sunlight. I talk about overcast light when you're outdoors. And I kind of lay out what you can expect in those different lighting situations, because sometimes if you don't know what to look for, you'll miss seeing it. You always hear from art teachers, paint what you see, and that's true. I teach that also, but a lot of times so I'm going cooler. This is like the core of the shadow. See how it gets a little bit darker on the bridge of her nose? And so trying to be faithful to that. There, I think that's a little better. Goes a little darker in the eye sockets here. There's also a little bit of greenish reflected light that's coming on the other side of her face. So I'm going to try to do that. Again, it's not so bright as the stuff that's actually indirect light, but it does lighten a bit. So let's see if I can get that effect in there.
And that's kind of affected by the color of the shirt, right? The local color is kind of affecting that.
Yeah, I think you're right. I'm not sure. That's actually a really good point. I hadn't thought about that, but you might be totally right. I was thinking it might be from the foliage outside behind her, but it may be a combination of the two. I'm not sure. But yeah, it definitely is some yellow green over here on this side of her face.
So someone is curious about how you keep all the colors from mixing into each other on their palette.
Well, I kind of try to stay pretty organized, like in piles. But right now, since I'm just doing like smaller bits of color, I'm mixing more with my brush. You probably noticed, and yeah, everything is getting mixed together. So I do have to be careful about that. Wow, I can't believe we're already like halfway through already. I think
you flying through the whole thing.
It's crazy.
Yeah. So right now,
okay. Well, what
brush size is it probably like size 2 or 4?
Yeah, a 2. Yeah, good guess. So I've gotten a lot smaller. I should. That's actually. I'm glad you mentioned that because I need to block in the rest of this before I get too bogged down with detail. Right?
Yeah. I know. Like once you get the face going, it's hard to pull away from it.
Oh yeah. Because that's like the main thing. The main my center of interest or the part that I really want to get across the most. I forgot about that hair that's supposed to go right there. All right, so let's see if we can get some of this background in. It's cooler, like a kind of a grayish blue in the background. If I can get something in there that looks about right. I'll get a bigger brush here too.
So I know you did a practice one for about an hour. So
yeah,
we have that time limit here, right? But in a normal situation, how long would it take you for a quick study like this? For this purpose?
Ideally I usually like about 3 or 4 hours. And then to actually finish it, like if I were to take something that I did from life for a few hours and then I brought it to a finish, I mean, I can I can end up working that thing forever and ever and spend 50 hours on the thing in an extreme case. So sometimes when I post like portrait sketches on Instagram and stuff, I think people probably think that I only spent like 3 or 4 hours or something, but if only they could watch me paint those. I'm I go back to my studio and I'm obsessing over every brush stroke, trying to make every stroke like a pretty little graphic design, and I end up spending 20 hours on it or something.
Yeah, but you can tell like all that little detail you put in, because I just love all the tiny little strokes you put on the portrait studies, because they are not just like a super one hair brush blending forever. I can tell you're designing every single shape that you put down. Like a good example is like the upper lip. It's a beautiful shape that you put down to indicate that, or sometimes it's the nostril or whatever. Like they're just so beautiful.
Oh, thanks a lot. I appreciate that. Yeah, that was Dan Gerhardt's that kind of told me about that, and he's really a master of that too. Making every brushstroke look like a nicely designed shape.
Yeah.
I can get kind of obsessive with it though, and sometimes I just have to tell myself like, don't worry about it so much, just paint,
Yeah.
Like don't. But I don't know.
But we appreciate it because when I look at your work, I'm just kind of looking at. Sometimes I will be obsessed over just one stroke you put down and just can't get over it because people can tell like you put in time to simplify that shape. Even just right now, my eyes keep going back to her fingers. You just group them together and just right there, as simple as that.
Oh yeah.
It's just beautiful.
Oh, thanks.
I think that's why we love painting, right? It's like you're designing shapes.
Yeah. Well, and that's actually another benefit of working from life. It's like the blessing and curse at the same time. It's like the curse because when you are painting from life, it's usually a really fleeting thing. You don't have the model forever, or if you're relying on natural light like this scene, the light's going to be totally different in a couple hours. So that's the bad part, but it's also the good part too, because it gives you this like immediacy, which forces you to get stuff down really quick, and that can actually translate into some really cool, spontaneous looking work in your paintings.
Well,
so when I go back into the studio and I try to finish up some of these things, I'm just faking it because I'm just working from a photo, but I'm still trying to make it look like I did it spontaneously and quickly.
Yeah, that's kind of the next question someone is asking is, as you finish the study from life and then move on to a bigger finished piece, do you try to capture the organic gesture in the study, or when you work on the bigger piece, you actually will somehow say like redesign or capture a new gesture the second time around?
No, I won't change it that much. I mean, there might be things here and there that I change, but as far as the gesture of the pose and things like that, I don't mess with that too much. If I did decide later that I wanted to change it, I would probably try to get the model back and actually pose them, in that different pose.
Mm-hmm.
Although I don't know, I kind of have to go back on that because I have, like one time I was painting a little girl running in their garden, and she can't hold a running pose, but I still painted her from life. But she was just sitting there on the wall of the garden, and since the light was similar, I was able to use that as a good color study for the studio piece, even though she was in a different pose. So I'll do things like that sometimes too. But ideally, I would want the pose to be the same, if possible. Now, this is pretty interesting. As the light turns away from the light source, it usually gets cooler. So can you see how I went a little bit more purpley with that halftone there between light and shadow? Mm-hmm. And that might be surprising because you're thinking about warm light. So why, how it's supposed to be warm? Why is it going cooler? Well, it's just that as it turns away from the light, a lot of times that can cool. So now that I have that cooler halftone, that's helping the form to turn around. And I've also softened the edge between light and shadow a little bit too.
Okay, we got a very interesting, cool question here. So
okay.
It's about edges. Say you have a focal point somewhere, but around the scene there are some other objects with a little bit harder edges. How do you handle the edge work so the other harder edge is not going to take away the focal point?
Yeah. So let's see. In my opinion, there are. I talk about this in the final units of my course. So now I'm like, oh man, I can't give it away. But no, it's okay. I'll give it away. There are several things that are really eye-catching, and in my opinion, there are a few things that are more eye-catching than a sharp edge. So as long as, like for instance, this is a really sharp edge shape right now, and I'll soften it a little bit more as I go along, but it's also a very simple shape. I mean, it's just a rectangle. So the fact that it's a simple shape is not going to be as eye-catching as the complex shapes of her face, for instance. So I still think that the face is going to trump this shape down here. And as far as value contrast goes, I have very high value contrast here, actually higher than what's here, because I have this very dark value against this very light value. So that's high value contrast combined with complex shapes. That'll help this to be the center of interest rather than, for instance, this or this, because those are more simple shapes with a little bit less contrast.
Yeah, and our eyes and our brains are a lot more complicated than just a few edges. Like our brain is able to process all the information at the same time, and we are drawn to more complicated things or interesting things. Kind of like you're saying, if you're able to play, kind of like juggling all different things at the same time, right? Like create a center of interest. You can accomplish that by contrast, edge, design, and all kind of different things. It's not just one thing, say like razor sharp edge.
Right. Yeah. And that's a great question, though, because I mean, sharp edges are something that are really eye-catching. So you can use them to your advantage, but sometimes I find students that are they're afraid to use those because they're afraid to detract from the center of interest, and that is something to be cautious about. But the more you use those things that are really eye-catching, you kind of get an idea of the hierarchy of things, and you'll be able to more confidently put those sharp edges or high contrast things in different places and be confident that it won't take away from the center of interest. Richard Schmid, I mean, is one that I've really learned a lot from composition from looking at his book Alla Prima. So, and just studying his compositions has really taught me a lot.
Yeah, who doesn't read that book, right? We all have that book.
Hopefully everyone has access to it. Yeah, you if you don't own it, you might be able to get it through interlibrary loan or something like that. I'm not sure.
Yeah, but that is one book that is so worth getting. It's not even that expensive, but the knowledge in that book is just so much.
Yeah, it is. Yeah, that book was very helpful to me. Andrew Loomis's books have been helpful. There have been a lot of them.
We have a whole bunch of questions. Let me see if I can get through these.
Okay.
So one of them is about studio lighting. I don't think I don't want to distract you from talking about studio lighting right now, just because that might actually go on a tangent without you getting up to look at the lighting setup. So we probably would skip that one. Sorry about that, Scott. And the palette, yes, his palette is upright right now just for the filming purpose. And the kind of easel that's holding in place, I think it's just one of those standard easel that anybody can find, right?
Yeah, it's a steel watercolor tripod easel. Okay. And it's the Richardson brand that we have, which have turned out to be really durable.
Yeah. And then
so I've got the same thing for both of these.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, so over here at Squinting Academy, we use like that Strata easel watercolor pad. Is a metal coated surface. That one works really well, and you can just pop it on the tripod. So that's what we use over here. So let's see the next one. Do you always varnish your work?
I've been using what's it called, Gamvar by Gamblin, and they say that you can put that on as soon as the painting is dry to the touch. So if I have to send out a painting right away, I don't have 6 months to let it dry or whatever, then I've started using that stuff. I had Andrea zoom in so you can see the detail on the face now that I'm doing that part.
Yeah. Let me move the reference photo to the side so we can
okay. Yeah.
See, because it's kind of blocking you.
I've got to go a little darker with that core shadow on her nose. I guess I'm afraid to go too dark, but it needs to go a little darker. right here. Not quite that cool though. So it's just back and forth, you know, cooler, warmer, darker, lighter. I'm constantly comparing each color to each other till it looks right.
Yeah. Here's a very interesting question. When you painted that girl running, did you capture her pose from a photo, or did you have her run many times?
Yeah, so you know, the last thing I wanted to do was be like, okay, pretend like you're running, and now I'll snap your picture because it would look totally fake, like a statue, right?
Yeah.
So I actually had her running around and around in circles, and every time that she came around in the circuit, I would snap her picture. And I just, you know, I took a ton of photos and found the best one from all of those. But yeah, so I painted that from photos. But like I said, I still had the color study that I did from life in a different pose, but the lighting was the same, so it still helped me with the colors.
Yeah, and that's what this color study or value study is used for. Is you want to capture the values and the colors from life as a note, so we can later go back to compare to.
Yeah, exactly.
So that being said, don't forget the goal. Like the goal is to capture the color temperature and the value. So don't want to get carried away by all the detail and then lose that.
Yeah. But now I am moving into a little more detail because I think I'm down to about the last 15 minutes or so.
Yeah.
And, you know, it is important to get some of the little nuances of color here and there because the camera has a tough time picking up on those as well.
Yep.
So again, it doesn't have to be super detailed, but, you know, some idea of these little incidental colors here and there can be really helpful. You'll notice I'm using a lot smaller brush. I'm slowing way down, but you know, it's okay because in the overall picture, I've captured the feeling that I saw, you know, of the light. So. Okay, so like I said before, the downward facing planes are catching more light. So that's why on her upper lip here, I am going a little bit lighter. I don't want to get it too strong. I think I'm okay for now. Let's see. Okay, now you guys have a lot of glare. I'll try to get rid of that. Let's see if I can do that. Bottom lip got a little carried away there. Let me fix that up.
It's good to see it up close like this because you can really tell all these little strokes. They're just a whole bunch of abstract shapes. It's not necessarily say like, oh, that is a thumb of the hand holding the hair, rather than, you know, like it's just the shape that you see there that you capture with a simple stroke. And I think that's why your work is so beautiful and attractive. Is all the abstraction shapes. It's making it vibrate together.
Oh, thank you. Yeah, I think I don't want to misquote him. I think it's Schmid that he who says it in his book that he tries to see each shape as a brushstroke. You know, so for every shape that he's seeing in the subject, he's trying as much as possible to do it with one stroke. And I mean, that's a pretty tough challenge to meet. But as a general thing, as long as you don't let it stress you out or anything, I think it's really good because it helps you to simplify.
Yeah.
Just got to darken a little bit here. That part's in a little bit more shadow, like that. Okay.
And later you will post a finished or whatever degree you finish it to your Instagram, right?
Yeah, sure.
So everybody, make sure if you're not already following Adam, just hop over to his Instagram account and check out the finished painting plus a lot of his artwork there.
Yeah. Also, I don't think we mentioned my workshop. Actually, I was going to mention that because the lighting is that I'm going to be teaching in this workshop coming up is actually pretty similar to this. It's going to be an outdoor figure painting or portrait painting workshop. It's called painting the portrait in the landscape, and it is September 2, 3, and 4 in Parkville, Missouri. And Keith has a link to that in the description as well.
Yeah.
If anyone, if that sounds cool to anyone. So we're gonna, keep it COVID-19 safe and do masks and social distancing and all of that. So.
Yeah, and it's not gonna be, well, it's good to see it up close like this virtually, but it's not gonna be the same as the in-person workshop. Like, there's so much more you will learn from the in-person workshop.
Yeah, I try to tell people like there's benefits to any format. So like something like this, you can, obviously Keith's making it for free, and you can, I'm trying to talk about as many concepts as I can, but then, nothing beats the in-person in a workshop. But then, for some people, if it's impossible to travel or whatever, then online teaching is awesome. And Keith has tons of amazing artists that he's got, teaching at Sentient. I've got my online video course. There's also a link to that. So there's other opportunities there, especially if you're, don't feel good about traveling right now or whatever. So
yeah, and of course
it's a good age that we live in.
The online teaching, the benefit of that is you're able to go back and review at your own pace. And I know a lot of people, we are busy. It's not like you're able to schedule a certain date or time to do in-person workshops. So that's why.
Yeah.
And also, I think the biggest benefit of online courses, especially the way you and us structure it, is we're teaching you to speak the language. So when you actually show up to the in-person workshop, you know what Adam or, like Mike Mom or Josh Clare or Brian Martaylor, why they are telling you this or that. Like, if you show up without any knowledge about, say, color temperature, it's going to be a struggle. Even though it's online workshop, it's valuable, but there's a gap to fill. And online teaching really fill that gap really well.
Yeah, definitely. And, you can only talk about so much in like a 3-day workshop.
Yeah.
So the other thing too is that, with like for my online course, I'm sure it's the same for yours too. I just like, it's virtually everything I know about portrait painting that I, crammed into one course, which is why it took me like 3.5 years to create it.
But,
because there's so much.
It's not just cramp it in though. You have it so organized, and that's the same thing with us. We spend a lot of time to build it. I would say, it's a university level course, right? Like every module leads to the next one. And it's almost like you're taking a college course, but it's self-paced, it's online, and we're making that available for anyone who wants to learn, especially like the cost-wise. It's nowhere close to a college course.
Yeah, right. Mm-hmm. Yeah, you can compare it to, the cost of a college course or something, and, it's going to be a lot more affordable than that. So, yeah, for sure.
So someone's wondering if there's a way we will make the reference photo available for them to download to practice. I don't know. It's not my reference photo, so.
Yeah. Let me just ask Andrea, and then we'll try to figure that out.
Yeah. So see, that is a good artist practice. Always get the model consent.
Yeah.
If you're a portrait or figure artist, you got to make sure that's very, very important part is always got to get the model consent. Don't just put any like model reference photos on the internet. It's not respectful.
Sorry. Yeah. Some models too, like particularly professional models, that's how they make their living. And so you might think that you can just like go in and snap a photo and you're good or something, but it's always good just to ask, just to make sure.
Yeah.
All right. How much time do I have left?
We have 6 minutes.
Okay. Well, I'll try to put in a few little accents here and there. There's some nice shadows that help define the scarf.
So just let you know, since you performed so well, now it's okay to tell you how many people are watching right now.
Oh no!
No,
Okay,
it's
what?
good. So we
No,
got
it's cool. I know.
426, man. 28, 428 now. 428 people
Oh my word!
cramped in your
Wow.
tiny little virtual studio. Can you feel them breathing on you right now?
I can feel them breathing down my neck. Yeah.
Yeah. Well,
No,
this
I'm
is the
just
cool
kidding.
thing about the virtual learning experience, right?
Oh, it's so cool. I can't believe, I mean, to be able to connect with that many people, that's amazing. That's so cool.
Yeah.
Thank you, everyone who's listening. I really appreciate you guys tuning in.
Yeah, and of course, like we talked about, we are really working hard here to create a whole bunch of resources. And of course, if we're able to do everything for free, but everybody has their time constraint. So some of the courses will be free, some of them they are not, but we just make all the resources available as affordable as possible to help you guys learn. And of course, check out Adam's course, and there's the upcoming workshop Adam is teaching. Like we mentioned, the link is down below. And of course, over here at Sentient, we have some great workshops coming up. Casey Childs in August and Suchitra Bhosle in August. If you're into portrait and figure work, those two will be really good. I don't know if you guys know about Casey Childs. If you don't, look him up. He's just this amazing artist. And same as Suchitra. She's gonna teach us painting figures in interior. So
painting figures with an interior. Oh, that's cool. That's cool.
Yeah,
now
like
both
a lot
both
of
of those
Sergeant stuff. It's interior, like architecture stuff. So that'll be a fun one.
Yeah, both Suchitra and Casey, they're amazing painters.
Yeah, we just like to get all these learning opportunities for everybody. Especially, even Suchitra was telling me like, hey, gotta make sure to send her a link because she wanna watch you today. So
oh, okay.
She's probably one of the 435 people there.
Oh, awesome. Okay.
Yeah.
We enjoyed watching her demo at the Portrait Society.
Oh yeah. Like she really makes her brush stroke count.
Yeah, I love her brushwork. That right there, I wanted to get that in because it's really beautiful. That sunlight is bouncing off of the yellow chair and really reflecting into her jeans. And you might not expect that, but it goes very like kind of orangey. It's really cool. So soften some of these transitions between light and shadow there.
So as you're capturing these colors, do you exaggerate them if you see necessary?
Sometimes, yeah. That's a really interesting question. Sometimes I do, but I would say for the most part, I let the subject be my blueprint, and I enjoy painting pretty faithfully to how it actually appears, at least according to how my eye sees it. Mm-hmm. So sometimes I will, though. I don't let that stop me from putting in some expressive color here and there.
Okay, let's get a final question in here.
Okay.
So what is your final ultimate tip for painting backlit photos?
My final ultimate tip? Oh man. Let's see. I think it's what I said before. Like when I first tried to do this type of lighting, I remember I was a student, studying art, and I just got the shadows way too dark, and it was a portrait where the facial likeness really mattered, and so that's probably the main reason why I wanted to show this today, is just to kind of show you that from the very beginning I chose an average value for the face that was not too dark. It still needs to be much darker than the stuff that's directly hit by light, but not super dark like this stuff. And that'll really help, because in the beginning I really struggled with that, and I was disappointed after I spent a lot of time on a portrait at how dark it turned out. I was like, oh man, I kept thinking maybe by the time I finish the thing it'll be better, but nope. That's something that you got to do in the beginning. You can't really do it later.
So I know you got that workshop coming up. Down the road, are you entertaining any ideas on any like online workshops, just in case there are some people that can't make it there?
Yes. I hope it's okay for me to mention this, but the lady who is hosting the workshop, it's her gallery. It's the Kathy Klein Gallery. We have talked that if we don't get enough people who feel comfortable with an in-person workshop, we have talked about the possibility of doing it online. So I guess I would say just stay tuned to my Instagram account, which is I think it's, what is it, Clague Fine Art? There's an underscore in there somewhere.
Yes, let me look it up. I would type it up here.
You know what? You have a link to it in the in the bio anyway.
Okay.
So
just go down to the description. There's the link there.
It's Clague_Fine_Art. So that would probably be the best place to stay tuned to see if we do it online. Yeah. So. Or
sign up for your newsletter, actually, because you, like today, you do a good job letting people know. So if you guys want to stay tuned, just head over to the website and sign up for the newsletter so you don't miss out.
Yeah, actually, you know what? The best way to sign up for our newsletter is to just go to claguefineart.com, and that's claguefineart.com. It's the same link for the online course that Keith has in there. And scroll all the way to the bottom, and you're going to create a website account. If you want, of course, totally optional. But when you sign up for the website account, you get the first unit of my online video course for free.
Yeah.
You get a 20-minute video from the course for free, and it automatically signs you up for to be notified of workshops and things like that. So that's probably the easiest, most beneficial way that you can sign up for our newsletter.
Yeah, because we can tell people just can't get enough of that today, and that's a good way to continue learning. Just head over there and create an account and just keep going and get more from Adam.
Yep, and it's no strings attached. You can keep that access to the first unit as long as you want. There's no obligation to sign up for the rest of the course, but it'll allow you to get a taste of it to see if it's something that you want to invest in.
Cool. Well, it's 5:02. We kind of went over a few minutes, but I can tell you can stop.
Yeah. I just want to keep going and going. Here, I'll show you the other one I did too. It's. Oh, let's see if I can turn it so there's no glare. So that's the one that I did on Saturday, as that was just my practice one, and then there's the one from today. So they're a little different. I actually have more contrast, more value contrast in this one than in this one. So it has a little stronger feeling of light. It's just kind of cool. Painting the same subject 2 different times, you get 2 slightly different results.
Awesome. Well, thank you, Adam. We'll let you go because I know there are other things coming up, but thank you everybody for tuning in today. And like we said, don't forget to check out, here's the face. Don't forget to check out Adam's course and the upcoming workshop and all the good stuff we talk about. We have a lot of resources here for you to continue learning. And thanks, Adam, for doing this. So wonderful.
Yeah, thank you very much, Keith. I really appreciate it. It was fun.
Okay, well, we'll talk to you later.
All right, thank you guys.
Okay, bye.